You're listening to the RE Social Podcast with your hosts, Andrew and Vince from OnV Invest. For more information, go to onvinvest.com.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of RE Social Podcast. Today we have Grace. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce your last name. How do you say it, Grace?
Gudenkauf.
Oh, that sounds German. Is that German?
It is.
Oh, cool. Drew, what are you? Are you Irish?
I'm mostly German, so right away I was like, "Yeah, these are my people."
Yeah.
Yeah. Fun
You have to
fact,
say it.
actually.
I feel like I want to hear your grandpa say it though. Like that's gonna be fun. Anyways, we're already signed. Give him some caffeine, some chocolate, and he's going crazy. Grace, if you would just tell us a little bit about yourself, like a good 60, 90 second. Who is Grace?
Ooh. Okay.
What's going on? Why should the listeners listen in right now? And what can they learn? Anyways, go for it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, guys. But yeah, I'm Grace Gudenkauf. I'm 25 years old, born and raised in Iowa, and that's where I invest. I only recently moved to Tucson, Arizona. So now I am officially an out-of-state investor, although it doesn't feel like that. But I do real estate full-time. I have for 2 years now. We do long-term, mid-term, lots of rehabs. I also run Women Invest in Real Estate group, which we do retreats across the U.S. and have a podcast. That's definitely my passion project. And then more about me personally, I love playing pickleball, and I recently got into bouldering. So that's a really fun hobby that I've been obsessed with lately.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but is pickleball like kind of tennis light, or what is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like a smaller tennis.
Someone just told me to try pickleball because I was complaining. Like, dude, I've played tennis a couple times and I'm dying in like 2 minutes.
Pickleball's all the craze, apparently.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you ever come out this way, I walk by in my gym, that pickleball court, and I'm always like, I would love to just step in there and see what I got.
Yeah. It's fun because you can really hit it hard.
Yeah, let's go for it. Get the anger out.
I know
Get the real estate anger out when the tenants don't pay.
I know the pickleball current champion is like a 14-year-old teenage girl, right?
Really?
Yeah, because my intern's mom plays, and she says she gets smoked by those girls.
Wow. It's like video games,
Yeah.
like all the 10-year-olds are the ones like really dominating, so that's why I don't play anymore.
Anyway, since this is not a pickleball podcast, we're gonna jump into So Grace, I've listened to your podcast episode with Bigger Pockets, and that's how I came to know. And then obviously we were hanging out in Limitless. Did you also volunteer with Tall, right?
I did, just so I could get the free ticket, to be completely clear. I don't know Tarl.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I only know him from interviewing him on the podcast, and he just mentioned, and then, I was able to. So we were volunteering with Tall for Limitless Expo, if anybody who's been there.
I may volunteer. Sorry, side note, I may volunteer and go next time. I really like his content. Like,
oh, yeah.
I feel very aligned when he posts something like, that's what I feel like,
Yeah, it's him and Kenny. But going back to you, so give us a little bit of background. Like, I know you did some engineering too, right?
Yes, I used to be an engineer for a Fortune 500 company.
Yeah, and then you just you were in La Jolla hanging out, right? And then you figured out like, this is not working out, or like how did that go?
Yeah, so during the summers in college, I would go actually to Carlsbad, but very close, and work at Collins Aerospace as a mechanical engineer. And it was really fun and it was fantastic. But I think in the back of my mind, I always knew I would have my own business. I never knew what. Like growing up, I just always knew that. And then so when COVID happened, I graduated from college. I kept working remotely. I didn't move out to Carlsbad. And that's when I stumbled upon real estate. My boyfriend had flipped a house and I was like, okay, maybe we should try this. And we started doing it. And I was like, if I move to Carlsbad, I'll never be able to do this. Or it will be a lot slower because it's way more expensive. The average house in my market is like $150,000. It's crazy. And so as COVID went on, I got more and more interested in like, oh my God, what if I just don't go to Carlsbad? What if I just quit before they make me move back out there and I try real estate full time? And honestly, I should not have been having those thoughts. I had like 2 properties. but I had just learned creative financing. I had wholesaled a property. So I knew if I quit, I definitely could get scrappy and do some deals and put some deals together to live off of. And eventually I did. And looking back, I'm like, I can't believe I did that. But it's been 2 years and I haven't looked back.
And so there's enough cash flow to have kind of like that monthly income coming in to cover your expenses. Is that what I'm hearing?
Currently, yes. When I quit, no. I knew I would have to like wholesale or do something else for money.
So you kind of like took a big jump, bet on yourself.
Yes, I definitely lived off my savings for probably 3 or 4 months until I got things up and running.
And what does that mean, up and running? What's happening now in the background? Where's that cash machine coming from? Is that the MTRs?
Yeah, midterm rentals are a huge cash flow source in my business. I feel like I was the first person in my market to really do it. So I had a lot of success. And then now we have 24 units. So between our long-term rentals, a few rent-to-owns, and midterm rentals, our cash flow is enough for me to live off of. And then I also have WIIRE as an income and a few other income sources.
Nice. Yeah. And WIIRE, can you explain to the listeners what WIIRE is real quick? Because you had to do that to me before that we started.
Yes, it's Women Invest in Real Estate. It started as a virtual meetup during COVID between me and a friend, and it's evolved into a whole community, a podcast, courses, Instagram page. And then the best part is we host retreats all across the US where people come for a long weekend. And we've done Denver, Salt Lake, Gatlinburg, Orlando. So those are like the best part of my year.
Awesome. We'll ask you to plug that here towards the end of the podcast. But any ladies listening, that's definitely, I love that you've got that community going on, because it can be very intimidating. Every female that we've ever talked to kind of in this way, they're like, yes, it's male dominated. No one takes me seriously. So I love that women can do it too. And in a lot of aspects probably do a way better job. In particular for me, a lot of what I do is the operations and setting up the furnished rentals. And I thought I was pretty good at it as a creative person. I like, art and creativity and an open room as a canvas. But the second I brought in even my mom, and in this Nashville deal, there's this lady named Laura Lee. If you're listening, she is epic. No one steal her. She's mine. She set up this newest rental for us in Nashville. Very little, I gave her a checklist. Here's the items that you'll need. Go. And here's your budget, right? And she just way better than I would have set it up. So, but amongst other things, speaking of women who are like insanely important to us, realtors, I think Vicky out there in Nashville, she's been like, that rock star hang with rock stars kind of thing. She's the one. Like, we found her, and then everything's been way boots on the ground, out of state. Wow. In fact, let me pivot real quick. What have been some of your challenges now that you are in Arizona and you have majority of your portfolio in Iowa? Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
What challenges have you experienced, if any? Or are you perfectly set up where it's just been easy?
No, I was not perfectly set up. In fact, I was excited to move to Tucson because I knew I was too involved in my business. We started out DIY, which is fantastic to get started on and ball on a budget, but really hard to transition into like being the business owner and not the contractor. And when I say we, I'm talking about me and my business partner, who's also my boyfriend. So I say life partner and business partner. His name is Brant. Anyways, we moved out here for him to get a job. So I was excited because I knew that I would no longer be able to do half the things that I do in my business, and that I would have to set up my systems and processes. So I wouldn't say there's been any huge issues. I was pretty prepared and excited for it and just figured things out as they came along. But I'm learning to delegate more, lean on my contractors more. My project management, I've realized I'm terrible at. So I'm hiring a project manager to help me because I just don't have the bandwidth to do that. So it's been a really great 3-4 months of just stepping more into the business owner role and not the contractor or manager or answering the emails.
Wow, that's awesome. And in particular, you're able to afford it through the cash flow. That's something that we've been struggling with. And so selfishly, I'd like to ask and maybe pick your brain for us as well as for the listeners. What are some of those, maybe 80-20 Pareto principle? What's like that? The 20% is probably giving you most of the cash flow. What are those things? Give us your secrets. What's happening?
Yeah, definitely. I have an 8-unit that I converted, rehabbed and converted all the units to midterm rentals. That's probably like a third to a quarter of my cash flow for my portfolio.
Sorry to interrupt, but all 8 of those are furnished?
All 8.
Midterms? Wow. That's in Iowa?
That's in Iowa. And I'm going to be completely honest. I don't think I'm that great at midterm rental. I just was in a niche enough market that nobody else really did it. So I was kind of the only option.
When did you get started, Grace?
My friend Amelia had done one midterm rental in a market about 2 hours away. So when I bought this 8-unit, I knew I wanted to rehab them anyways. So I was like, I'll try the first one on midterm rental. And if it goes well, I'll do the second one. And if the second one goes well, I'll do the third one. And then I just pretty much eventually converted all 8 of them. And that property rented long-term rental for $4,200. And now I just looked in my QuickBooks. I made almost $12,000 in revenue. Again, that's not my expenses for July.
So you kind of essentially tripled your monthly revenue.
I tripled the rent.
Wow. That's amazing. And did you get in there early? Is that what I'm hearing? Because MTR is now like a big buzzword with regulations from, municipalities and I can go on and on. But yeah, so what year did you actually start establishing MTRs?
The end of 2021. So almost
early.
2 years ago, I did my first midterm rental.
And why'd you choose midterm and not short term?
I'm not in a vacation market, so that definitely wouldn't have done well. And I also did not want the management and hospitality side.
Right.
I like to think midterm rentals are more like long-term rentals where you get a good tenant and hopefully they don't really need much for 90 days.
Right. So it was mainly the you knew your bandwidth of what you could handle in terms of work and what you didn't want, and you went for the MTR. That's great. What do you think? I don't know if you're because you're an engineer, maybe you did run your numbers. What, if you can give me maybe rough percentages of let's say compared to the LTR, like long-term 10, 12-month MTR, short-term, what do those percentages tend to look like? What was it, 1.5 times or?
It was, so long-term on one of these units would be anywhere from 400 to 600 because it was a mix of 1 and 2 beds, which seems crazy low. But again, I bought this 8-unit for $320,000. So it's a very cheap area. And then midterm, I rent them starting at $1,100. So about double on the low end, but all the way up to $1,450, I think is my highest one. So I look for cash flow. I want my cash flow to be at least double. So if I cash flow $200 for a long-term single family, I want to cash flow $400 for a midterm rental.
Got it. And what tools do you use to analyze and discover that?
Yeah, for comps, I look at Furnished Finder. And at this point, I have had 2 years of experience to where I know what the rates are going to be. So when I do set up another one, I'm pretty well aware of what I'm going to get for rent. But when I was first starting, I definitely went super low on my analysis to make sure I had room for error. I remember I underwrote that the midterm rentals would rent for $800 to $1,000, and they did way better than that.
So everything else is bonus. That's amazing. And then just real quick, I'm going to hand it off to Vince. I feel like I've been hogging it because I'm so into furnished and we're just trying to navigate and get better cash flow. I've been kind of hogging the conversation. But one last question from me, at least for this. In terms of your portfolio, am I hearing that all of it is in Iowa?
Yes, all within 15 minutes of each other, every property.
So pros and cons real quick for the listeners, obviously, is what would you say for that, Grace?
Of being in one specific area?
Yeah, what are the pros and cons of that?
I think it is the best to be in one area because you can go so much deeper. You're going to know your numbers and your processes and your contractors and your realtors so much deeper than if you're spread out into 3 different markets.
Yeah.
On the flip side, if something major happens to that market, you're screwed.
Right.
There was a huge flood in 2008. and half my rentals would have flooded. That would have sucked. And then the other thing is Iowa is a very low appreciating area. So you hear these numbers, they might sound great, but there's like no appreciation.
I was just going to ask that. Okay.
Yeah. So if you want high appreciation, that's not the place to be.
Got it. Okay. Wow. So it's purely a cash flow play. That's interesting.
Pretty much.
Yeah. The big question I was going to ask was the appreciation aspect. So it's almost zero.
I use like 3 to 5%. I think if you look at the actual numbers last year, Iowa appreciated like 8 to 10%. But then you have states like Seattle's not a state, Washington, Oregon, California, they saw appreciation of like 20, 30, 40%. So it is nowhere near that.
But at least you still have appreciation. I thought you were saying it was zero. Like at that point now I'm like,
well, I mean, if you think about the economic circumstances, like everything appreciated in the last 2 years, no matter how crappy it was. Right. So once we get into a more stable market, that appreciation will definitely slow down significantly. So in comparison to other states, it is super, super low.
Got it. And so are you at this time trying to look for something with maybe a better appreciating market or a different market? Or you're still looking to like double, triple down on what you got in Iowa?
I was at one point thinking of getting into the Tucson market, but I realized it's like starting a second business. I already know my contractors, my systems, the laws, where I like to buy in Iowa. So it makes sense for me to keep doing what I'm doing there. But if a deal fell into my lap here, I would definitely scoop it up. I'm just not necessarily spending time and resources to find one.
So Grace, for the Iowa market, do you still see population coming in? Is there new employers, or is it basically you're just serving a community like the hospital or something like that, and then you're just giving housing for those?
The population's definitely growing. It is nothing like you're going to see in bigger cities. But yeah, there's a handful of pretty steady employers. We have the hospitals. We have a pretty big defense contractor in my area. I'm not worried about that. I like having a cash flow market. And then hopefully maybe in the future, I'll be able to have maybe a vacation home or two in a high appreciating area that I can capitalize on that, on the appreciation.
Yeah, you're definitely going about it the right way. I would say, since we started this podcast 18 months ago, I've been able to talk to like all the big dogs, like, Kathy Fedke and Neil Bawa. We talked to Sarah Weaver. I don't know if you know her from Midterm Rentals. She might be a good contact. I can introduce you if you don't have her.
I know her.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So I was, Drew and I, we started buying in the high appreciation markets, but the cash flow is so bad. The only way that we're actually surviving, to be honest, is because we both have high incomes and we just feed the properties, in terms of, and especially blue states when the tenants don't pay and stuff. And it costs us a lot of money, like hundreds of thousands of dollars out of our pocket. But, if we sell it, we can make a couple $1,000,000 in terms of equity. But I think for people who are listening, it is very important to know that if you're going to be doing stuff like quitting your job and like relying on this, you don't want to be doing what Drew and I are doing. You will be homeless within a week. Like there's no way like you will be able to survive, right? So we're actually trying to transition now to buying more cash flow. I still cannot get away from thinking about appreciation. So it'll be very difficult for me to buy somewhere where I know the appreciation is very less. But I think what you're doing is really smart because the chance of you actually losing is very, very slim because you have that heavy cash flow. So who cares if you don't appreciate? You will always have the property bring you money. So that's kind of cool. So how many units do you have in that area?
I think it's 24 units.
And then you're bringing in like $400 or $500 a door in terms of cash flow?
If it's a midterm, 400 minimum. But if it's a long term, it'll be probably $200 minimum.
Okay. So you're making like more than $10,000 in cash flow every month, right? That's pretty good.
Yes, but at the same time, I'm growing my team. So I'm starting to have more overhead costs where it's not just what does each property make, it's what am I also spending in the background.
Yeah, that's such a tricky entrepreneur. Everyone has to learn it. How do you hire? How do you budget? How do you reward and incentivize? It's a whole topic. Different day, different time.
I think we bring in like 60 grand or something per month, and then our mortgages PITI is over 50 grand. But then once you add the cost to run this podcast, our meetups, and go take out a couple of our investors and pay the partners, we have like $0. We've been doing this for 5 years, right? It's crazy that we spend 60 grand a month. That's insane. Yeah.
And that's why you have to, like you said, you have to figure out what is it that you want. Because if you're somebody who loves your job and you're a really high income earner and you just want to build a nest egg, then maybe what you guys are doing is perfect. Because in 10, 20 years, you're going to have millions of dollars to sell and capitalize on. But if you're like, I need to quit my job tomorrow because I hate it, you definitely need to chase the cash flow, not the appreciation.
And when you were working in California, Grace, you probably will be making close to 6 figures, right? If you had the job.
Right out of college, I was making about $83,000, and this was in 2020.
Yeah, you'll be making like 100,000 now if you were still there. So you think that your career-wise, because I am a mechanical engineer as well, so I still do that job. And for me, my job is really fun. Like I make medical devices, and I like to think that I change lives by writing different things and changing stuff. So for me, it doesn't bother me. So for you, it wasn't as fruitful that you actually wanted to pivot out of the career to just go into just a new career.
It wasn't that it wasn't fruitful. If I had to do an engineering job forever, it would have been that job. I just felt like there was something more, and I just saw how hard people worked and how stressed people always were. And I was like, I just don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah.
And so how did that change then? Because that's such a radical shift. Now, for the listeners listening, as an entrepreneur, you said, I don't know if you said this while we were recording or before. I think it was while we were recording. You said something about you always felt like you were an entrepreneur. I think, yeah, you did say that. So you always kind of had in your heart. I actually can relate. My real big passion is my music school. I absolutely love it. And a lot of the hiring and the processes and SOPs I'm creating is to get it off my plate so I can just manage the managers. So I can really focus on that because it's also a good, heavier cash flow play. But the point is I essentially realized quickly, I don't like to follow rules. I don't like to just go through the steps, chapter 1, 2, 3, even though I'm a good student. So how did that all evolve? I'm sure there was something already inside of you, like a seed of like, I got to find my own path. How'd you decide real estate?
Yeah. So to be clear, the decision to not go to Carlsbad was like a 4 or 5 month, like slowly inching towards that decision until I finally made it. I didn't wake up one day and be like, oh my God. But how I got into real estate is, like you said, I always knew I wanted to have my own business. So I think I was just hyper aware of opportunities. And I was very, very good with my money. I paid my own way through college, graduated debt free. And so when I started my job, I was like, okay, I'm going to make really good money. What is the smartest thing I can do with it? And for like 3 months before I graduated, I was always thinking, like, what am I going to do? Am I going to invest in stocks? Am I going to do something else? Am I going to just invest in my 401k or just try to save it all? And then when real estate slowly started to come into my mind, I was like, okay, this is a really good idea. This is what I could do to maximize my money. And while I was in college, my boyfriend worked for an investor and then went on his own and flipped a house. So I would like help him paint when I was in college. And I was like, this is a great idea, but like maybe in 5-10 years. It never occurred to me that like 6 months later I would do it. And then when I didn't go to Carlsbad and it was Iowa winter, we looked at each other and we were like, what the heck are we going to do all winter? Let's get a rehab project and it'll keep us busy. And so that's what started. And of course, I started listening to Bigger Pockets, and that's what really made everything take off.
Did you have the classic experience where Rich Dad, Poor Dad came across your desk and you're like, oh my gosh, that's the way, or no?
Yeah. I don't know what I read first, but definitely very quickly I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and loved it.
That's cool. And in terms of, getting that first deal, like the buy and hold, like the big risk, a lot of people have that kind of analysis paralysis. How did you overcome that as someone who you're an engineer, you know your numbers in and out. Like, how did you decide the market? How did you overcome the fears? All that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, it never occurred to me that I could invest anywhere other than my backyard. I didn't know out-of-state investing was a thing. I didn't know people did that when I started. So for me, it was always going to be that market. And then as far as the analysis paralysis, I probably have it too much the opposite way, where like I go too quick and I need to like slow down and think things through. I don't want to say I'm impulsive, but I definitely get very excited. So I didn't have any analysis paralysis. I will say the very first deal that I did, I definitely was super nervous about, but I knew that I underwrote it so conservatively that I would be okay. And the fact that we were DIYing it, because we didn't have any money to hire contractors. And my partner, thankfully, was super, super handy. So that I think also mitigated a lot of risk. But I was very excited to get the first project going. It took 6 months of DIY. If I had to do it again, I probably wouldn't. But I'm so glad that I did do that.
Your partner is a contractor? Is that what I'm hearing?
No, he's also an engineer, but he could be a contractor. He just knows how to do everything from being in real estate and working for investors when he was in college.
Gotcha. Okay. And so what would you have done differently on that first deal then? Like you were saying, like I would have done some things that what would that have been? Because I can tell you mine for sure. Right out the gate.
I definitely would have doubled my rehab budget and doubled my timeline.
Oh, I tell everyone that. Yes.
Yeah. Especially on the first one. Double it all.
Yeah, that was huge for us for sure. We just had our friend Amanda, who's a longtime listener. Hi, Amanda. I know she's already listening. And she's, got a couple flips in now in the Midwest and where she's from. And she's like, hey, like, what do you got for me? Like, I've been listening to you guys, but I'm still nervous. I'm like, let me just stop you right there. First of all, have a couple like A, B, C plans, like know your numbers. If it doesn't flip, if it doesn't sell, can you manage it? Can you sustain it? What are the payments going to be? And then I said, also the big thing that no one thinks about until they've gone a couple deals in is double your timeline, double your budget and plan for that. So the contractor tells you 15 grand, it's going to be 30 grand. Because there's always something happens. It's like, there's so many moving parts in a house and in a deal. It's just money gets just sucked out so fast. But that's great. It's interesting that you have that opposite where you're just like, you're gun ho. You said you're 25.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you also have that like, I'm 25. Like you could mess up hard for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And still be okay.
And that was another reason why I was so willing to quit my job. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a car payment or student loans. I didn't even have pets. So I knew if I up, it's just on me. I don't have anybody to take care of. Yeah. No, but you also knew that you could just roll up your sleeves and figure it out. I love that you just gambled on yourself and just believed in yourself. That's so amazing. Vince, you got anything on that?
Yeah. So I'd like to go back to your timeline and ask, so, you got the first couple of properties and then how did you keep buying stuff? Like you told us you quit your job and then I know you don't have money unless you're a trust fund baby.
Have you thought about investing in real estate and taking advantage of all of those benefits without any of the work? That is something that OnVIIRE not only provides, but has been providing since its inception. With friends and family, we have built an empire in a system of a wealth generating tool that is giving us and our friends and family that leverage in their life to create true wealth. Go to onveinvest.com for more to see if you qualify. And thanks for listening.
Give us the scoop.
I'm not a trust fund baby. The first property we used Brant's proceeds from his flip and then a little bit of my savings. I think I was living at home, or actually I was house hacking and my mortgage payment was $900. So we split it 3 ways. So everybody paid $300. So I had like no expenses and a pretty good income. So I saved my way through the first 2 properties. And then I was like, okay, I got no money. I need to learn creative financing. So I did a creative financing mentorship. And then the next probably like 5 properties I bought with either seller financing or wrap mortgage with like hardly any money down. And then I started buying properties that way. And then because I was also sharing on social media, I started to attract private lenders. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, if I find a deal, I know I'll find the money because I believe in myself and I know that I can. There's so many people out there who want to lend, and there's so many different ways to get money that it doesn't make me nervous anymore.
Yeah. So how did you do the no money down kind of deals? Are you bringing in private lenders as a debt partner? Are you using equity? Are you giving them equity? How do you do that?
No, I don't really have any equity partners. I have a couple properties with my sister, but that's it. For the no money down ones, there's a really great niche of sellers to focus on, and it's people who've bought their properties very recently and then are already upside down. So if they have bought 2020 to up until 2022, or even like 2016 to 2022, chances are their interest rate is below 5%. So they have a fantastic loan to let you take over. You just maybe aren't buying into a huge amount of equity, which again, I'm okay with if I know I'm going to cash flow $500 on a $900 mortgage payment. So for example, one of the first properties I bought, it was a property that needed a ton of work. They unexpectedly inherited it because their dad passed away, and some big investor came in and lowballed them at $34,000. The assessed value was 70, so they were really stuck on 70. So I said, I'll give you 70, but I'm not going to put any down. I'm only going to pay you $300 a month for 10 years. At the end of 10 years, I'll have paid you $36,000. I'll owe you another $34,000. And then I paid like $2,000 for closing costs. So basically for $2,000, I got this property. I had a $300 mortgage payment, maybe $200 in taxes and insurance. And then I rented it out for $1,100. So on rent to own. So I had no maintenance, no vacancy, no CapEx. So I was immediately cash flowing $600. I only put $2,000 into it. So I only needed 4 months to make back my initial investment.
Oh, I love that. And at the end of that 10 years, that's a balloon payment of $34,000.
It's a balloon payment. Yep.
Gotcha.
So are you writing their loan? So are you the loan is in their name? Is it subject to? Then you just take over the title?
That one was seller finance because it was free and clear. But nice. I have done subject to ones where they owe a little bit more than it's worth. So I say, I'll take over the loan. I'll pay it in your name. And basically you get to walk away free and clear.
And where do you find these sellers?
I do a really good job of marketing on Facebook for free. I just have a business Facebook page, and I offer $1,000 referrals for people who share about me or tell their friends and family. And I've gotten a lot of word of mouth referrals, which is another great benefit of being in one market and being in a small market.
Okay. So we like to do this in our podcast. It's like, let's say somebody's listening and then they're like, hey, bro, I don't have, $100,000, but I have 4 hours a day, and they want to go and start like the Facebook page or go after Zillow. How would you tell them, like, this is what you do? These are 3 steps you do, and then you can have this going.
I would build a free Facebook page. I would market about how you solve people's issues. I buy as is. I buy in 30 days or less. I buy for cash. And then start posting in groups or just about yourself and getting friends and family to follow, and then offer $1,000 referral, because any piece of real estate is going to be worth an extra $1,000 anyways. You just add it into your numbers that you underwrite. And it has to be a number that will make an ex-boyfriend call, is what I like to say. It can't be $100. Nobody's going to care about $100. It's got to, like in your market, I would say 5,000. Like you need to say 5,000. But those 3 steps cost you $0. And if you do it long enough and well enough, you can totally attract free leads and potentially find somebody who maybe will sell on seller financing or get a great off-market deal that you can go get hard money on and buy. That's what I would do.
And then you would tell the person that go after a market that you are familiar with then, right? And pick one.
I think there's millionaires in every market. So just go where you have a competitive advantage. For me, it was where I grew up.
That is smart. Yeah. That's where, well, I didn't grow up here. I'm from India, but Drew's from Kansas. So we live in Orange County. So we couldn't pick Orange County because we weren't rich, 5 years ago. So we started buying in a market that we can drive to, So it's like 3 hours away. We can afford it. Triplex, $250,000. We were like, okay, we could do that. We have 40 grand, and that's how we started. So yeah, that's always good to invest somewhere that you can. I like to say drivable at least, So if something's wrong, like, okay, well, I don't have a lot of money, but I can paint,
But I have time. Yeah.
Yeah. Roll up your sleeves and fix it, take care of it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's been part of the, I guess the buzz or high, but also the fear and trickiness of this Nashville deal that we have. We just finished setting it up. It's all running. But yeah, it's boots on the ground. It's having those people you can trust, you can rely on. It's taking care of them, making sure they're paid on time, making sure they do a good job, of course. And I believe in, kind of how the government runs, where all the branches are supposed to, checks and balances.
But yeah.
I like to kind of have that going as well. Just say, hey, just go in and check out, how clean is this place, or was this repair done correctly? And I love to kind of set it up, organize it, and run it. And it's been, wow, we got lucky, but it's only because we had such great, quote, rock stars. Rock stars on rock stars on rock stars. That whole roster out there is they've been so fantastic.
That's awesome.
And it's huge. And what I love about this market, and maybe you would consider it as well, is it's got that cash flow potential, but it's also got that appreciation. It's just north of Nashville. And of course, it's got, it's a red state. So we've had tenant issues forever. And I'm just going to be so super, honest. I love Nashville. I love live music. I'm into country music. I'm into rock. I love just that whole town. It's beyond music. It's just a cool town. And it's just, 15-minute drive down from this duplex. So if we want to go out there with our partners on the deal, or maybe future partners, or maybe just mom and dad and the family, we can all just pack up and drop our bags in our new unit in Nashville. And I think it's just really cool. So I don't know, if you ever want to come out to Nashville, you open invite, and we'll definitely be happy to share our team out there. It's so far so good.
Yeah, I do love Nashville. Yeah. Good for you guys.
Have you been?
Yes, I've been a few times. I like country music as well.
Nice. Yeah, Iowa. Yeah, Midwest. It's like
Arizona's a cowboy state too.
It is. Yeah, you're right. I remember when I went to I stayed in Phoenix for a little bit. I was playing a show, and I would drive into Scottsdale, and there was a lot of country kind of edge in that town. I was kind of surprised. Yeah, no, it's cool. I love Nashville. Love that market. What I'm almost kind of curious. What kind of, because you are really speaking the language. It sounds like you've got some mentorships under your belt. Sounds like you probably read a whole bunch of books. What were some of those key educational items that shifted your brain from just fresh out of college, knowing nothing besides how to engineer something, to 25-year-old, just pure full-time real estate professional? I'm so impressed the fact that you're 25 and you're doing this at this level. Tell me, give us the playbook. How does someone else like yourself do this? How does a 20-year-old, Grace, what would you tell her?
Well, thank you. But pretty quickly into real estate. I mean, I read all the books. I listened to all the podcasts, and pretty quickly I was like, I want to learn creative financing, so I'm going to do a mentorship. I did Jen and Joe Delafave's mentorship. If you want more information, you can reach out. But I mean, it was expensive, but I knew I was going to make my money back because I was driven. So I think a mentorship, if you find the right one and do your due diligence, can be a game changer, because I would rather learn from their mistakes than my own mistakes. And I'd rather take the elevator up instead of figuring it all out on my own. And then another game changer recently for me is reading. I'm looking around to see if I have it, but it's called 10X is Easier Than 2X. It's a pretty new book by Dan Sullivan. He writes a ton of
love Dan.
Yeah, he's very well known, but if you haven't read that, that's huge. It's really helped me think more about like, what is my zone of genius? You were talking about the 80% and the 20%. Like, what's my 20% that I need to focus on and hire out the other 80? And that, coupled with moving, has been huge for me. I've been doing interviews all day for a new position with me. It'll be my second employee. But I think it is continuous education. That's the key. You never want to be the smartest person in the room. I just signed up for a second mentorship about development. And I said, who are the other people? Because they better be smarter than me. I do not want to be the most accomplished person in this mentorship, or I'm not doing it. Yep. And I made her tell me everybody who did the last round. And I looked them all up and I was like, okay, those people are big. I'm going to do it. But if they had been newbies, I would have been like, I'm not going to learn. I want to go be clueless with people who know everything.
Love it. That's so great. That's such a humble and wise thing to do and to say. Even just recently, we go to a lot of the local real estate meetups here. There's some great ones. There's some okay ones. And I've definitely noticed that when you pay to play, you tend to be in a room with people who are taking it seriously and not just, hey, I think I might get my real estate license this year,
I like that, pay to play. And because I have another friend who like will always be like, oh, I don't believe in mentorships, or I don't blah, 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 blah. But I'm like, it's an investment. That's what it is. It's an investment in your business. And there's, of course, so many spoofy mentorships that don't do anything and they're fluffy, but the right one is an investment. And I agree, like there are certain things that you need to invest in and pay for to get to that next level of business.
Yeah. And how do you, kind of assess these? How do you filter out maybe some of the not so great mentorships? What are some of those tools?
Yeah. So I did the first one like almost 3 years ago, and it was really the only creative finance one that I knew. And I just connected with them really well. And I'd been following them for a while, so I knew that it would be good. And then the second one, for a while now, I've known I want to get into redevelopment. I'm kind of bored by residential real estate. It's not super exciting to me anymore. And I've been following this gal, and I actually met her at Limitless. She like revitalizes downtown small towns. And I was like, I want to do that. That's really cool. That's very dynamic. That's more than just the numbers. And then when I found out she was doing a mentorship, I was like, let me look into this. And I had a call with her and just really enjoyed it. And it was, I want to say it's $5,400, which might seem like a lot, but I was like, that's one real estate deal. And I make that back. In the world of real estate, that's nothing.
Right. And if if you're driven and you're going to hustle and make that happen, that's an easy decision.
That's not bad at all. I mean, usually they charge 30 grand to 50 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. I know we have running out of time. I wanted to check back on the timeline stuff. So you started buying some deals, and then you were doing it mostly creatively, most of the deals?
Yeah, I would say after the first handful, I started to do a lot of creative deals until I got more confident with finding private money.
Tell me about that 8-unit deal, because, so we have, I don't know, what do we have, like 25 doors or something, and they're all duplexes, right? And I'm scared to buy a single family, and I'm scared to buy like a 5-unit, because I'm like, all I know is duplexes. One guy doesn't pay, the other guy pays. At least I can cover most of the mortgage. I can cover the rest with my, pay my W-2 job. So we're going to be buying the first single family in the next few months. And I'm like freaked out, which is stupid because we bought so many units. So how did you buy that first 8-unit?
Well, first I want to say, I get where you're coming from, because we did BRRRRs forever and I was scared to flip. Yeah. And there's so many flippers who are like, no, rentals are scary. You have to deal with the tenant. So we all have that. But I got it from posting in a local Facebook group. I posted my buy box, and a broker reached out to me with an unlisted coming soon 8-unit. 2 days later, I put it under contract. I'd only ever bought duplexes. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know this is a good deal. And then after I put it under contract, I was like, oh, I don't have $100,000 to do this. So I put on a little investor meeting and invited a bunch of people to come to my Zoom. And I talked about 2 different ways to invest with me, private money or equity. And then the people who were interested, I had another conversation with them. And I ended up getting money, $100K or $120K from somebody who had a HELOC. And that paid for my down payment and the rehab of the property until I refinanced into a stabilized loan.
And you had to drop 100 grand into the rehab for the project?
I dropped 60 on the down payment and about 60 on the rehab.
And then did you have the property vacant, or were you cycling the tenants as they move out? You were doing the rehab?
I did it one at a time, cycling through them because I was too nervous to clear everybody out and do it all at once. And then that way the other tenants were kind of paying for that rehab a little bit as I went.
Yeah, that's how we do it too. If we have buy any like triplex and fourplex and stuff, we do one when they move out. We do the rehab. In fact, one of the units we bought a year ago, and then we just evicted one of the tenants. So we just finished the rehab on that one. The other tenant pays. So that's kind of cool. So you bought the 8 unit like that. So how are the numbers on that? Can you give us some numbers in
It was 320,000. We were all in with cash. Let me come back to that. It was 320,000. It appraised for 550,000 after we put in 60 to 80 of rehab. So we ended up cashing out at 80% LTV. And then we pocketed like another, I want to say 20 grand to just put into our reserves because we didn't have a ton of reserves for that property. So we chose to cash out a little bit above what we're all in for to put that in savings, which if you do the math, probably doesn't make sense, but it's what made me feel good. And then it was renting for $4,200 when we bought it. And now it rents for over $11,000 with midterm rentals.
That's really good. And then did you get like a 5-year arm on it?
Yeah. So because I don't have a job, all of my loans are 5/1 arms, except for my creative stuff.
Okay. Yeah. And then when are they coming due, the 5 years?
Anywhere between 25 and 27, 2025, 2027.
Okay. So you got a good runway. Hopefully, I was hoping that it won't come due this December. It's like 8% now.
Yeah. And the good thing is I'm always shooting to have 30% equity. So when I have to refinance, I only have to refinance the 70% minus whatever I paid off. So maybe 65 to 60% rather than another 80%.
Yeah. So that's really good. Except if you had the how they do the 5-unit pluses like DSCR and stuff. So if you don't have the enough LTV, you would have to put more money down, like you said, because of the interest rate, right? So then it just becomes more complicated. That's why during the pandemic stuff, we had a lot of opportunities to buy different things, but I usually played conservative, and I didn't want to do those kind of deals because a lot of the people who did those deals for those bridge loans, the 2 years, they're all screwed now because it's coming due, and they probably doesn't make that much more. They don't make 400% more to account for the interest rate going from 2.5% to 8%, right? Then they're going to lose the property. So we have all of our properties, all 12 of them, they're all 30-year fixed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That wasn't an option for me.
5/1 is pretty good.
That would make me feel good.
Yeah. 5/1 is pretty good. As long as you didn't have the bridge floating every month it changes interest rate. Hell no. Those are bad. Yeah. That's cool. So 5/1 for people who don't know is after 5 years, it'll adjust every year. You can refinance too. Cool. Anything else you got?
I'm loving it, man. It's been a great conversation. I think we have a lot in common. And again, just because this podcast is a partly educational tool for our listeners, but also selfishly for us. As a business owner, what are some of your challenges and criteria for hiring? I feel like as a business owner, I'm just now starting to really hit my stride and just be able to suss out real quick who's great, who's not, test them out quickly with little risk. What are some of the strategies that you're employing now to hire?
It's so hard because I've never had to do it before until my first employee. But right now I'm really trying to figure what is emotional versus what makes sense. What does the hiring manager of a 100,000 person company do? They're not like, oh, I could work well with that person. They're like, can they do the job? Do they have the experience? So I find myself thinking a little emotionally, and I'm trying to get out of that. But at the same time, it is a 3 to 4 person business, and I am going to have to work with you every day. So I do have to keep that in mind. So it's finding that balance. And then for me, I always try to make sure that I have crystal clear criteria. So I'm doing a second interview with somebody on Thursday, and I am going to write out like my crystal clear. If they do this, yes. If they can't do this, no. If they have this experience, yes. If they don't, no. So that it doesn't become an emotional decision. It becomes more of a black and white. This is how this is how I'm going to make my decision. And then I think once you hire them, it's having crystal clear expectations about what success looks like, about their job description, about communication, which I'm still learning.
Same. Yeah. I mean, you never really get to that mastery level. I feel like I'm still learning. I'm 37 and I've hired, I don't even know how many people at this point. I'm still learning. Oh, that's right. That's on me. That's my fault. I should have, and I've done the same thing where I'll hire someone based on emotion. And then not as much of like, well, let's look at the actual experience. And for me, in terms of this business, we had a VA for a short while. And like everybody, they interviewed well and they were great. Just didn't bring the skill sets that I was expecting, and kind of the questions I asked, I just kind of anticipated a little bit more. So that was on me. I should have looked a little bit more at portfolio, experience level, and all that stuff. But now I've learned that, you know what, a lot of that was my fault. I didn't come into it prepared with like the process. A big part of my past now, a few weeks, as I start to kind of get on Upwork and start looking around, is now I create SOPs. I discovered this thing where you can click 3 buttons on your laptop and it records your screen. And so now, just today, I'll have an Airbnb tenant say, hey, the thing, or I don't know, whatever the issue. Hey, the washer is not working. Cool. I have a process for that.
Yes.
And so it's a lot of work. It's a big undertaking, but similar to Tarl, I don't find myself especially passionate about real estate itself. I do enjoy the design. I do enjoy, I can manage teams. Like I love people. My thing is people for sure. So I enjoy that aspect of it. But aside from that, I'm just trying to get it all off my plate but just keep it moving. I love what real estate has done, is doing, and will do for me and my family's legacy. I'm sitting here trying to change my family legacy. I got no trust fund money, no real big money at all. In fact, so that's my big why. And that's what drives me to keep pushing forward and to get creative and in the Nashville deal, especially. So to kind of end, I guess I'm such a philosophical kind of person. What's your why? Like, you're such an anomaly to be 25, to be female, if I can be honest, a 25-year-old fresh out of college, like just doing such impressive things. Like it's been such an honor to meet you and talk to you. There's got to be a huge why. What is it?
I think for me, it's living a life of like my wildest dreams. I think so many people get caught up in the status quo and like get bogged down. And I feel like every day I'm like, oh my God, I could do whatever I want today. And that is crazy.
Oh yeah.
Because 99% of people can't say that. And so for me, it's always keeping that front and center of like the freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want, and to make my own decisions. That's my why.
I love that.
And I feel like so many people never get to that perspective. And to be honest, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah. And some people have that potential to do so, and they just don't take a chance on themselves, don't educate themselves, don't spend the $5,000 on a mentorship. I love it. That why is so huge. And I want to inspire others to pick up the mantle, to do what we're doing, because anyone can do it. If you want it bad enough, you'll educate it, you'll make the mistakes, you'll figure it out. You're already doing well in listening to this podcast, but like, I want to hear, can you brag a little bit about maybe some experience for like, you know what, I didn't feel like going in today and I just went to a trip or what? Like, is there anything recent?
Yeah. I mean, I travel a ton, probably at least twice a month.
Wow.
When I first quit my job and was doing real estate, I was like, you know what, I'm going to book a month in Mexico. So I went to Mexico City for a month and just hung out.
That's
and
so
Yeah. And then like last year for my birthday, I was like, you know what? I'm throwing myself a birthday party in Guatemala. And I got 10 of my closest friends to come join me. I was surprised they came. And then I just stayed for like a week because I didn't have to come home. I didn't have to do anything. Of course, I do have accountability within my business and people to take
Sure.
care of,
Sure.
but nobody above me.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's right there. I think a very common goal. And I just want anyone listening to realize it is possible at any age, at any time, if you're willing to just put in the work. Obviously, educate yourself like crazy and be ready to just make mistakes and learn from them. Man, but it all hinges on that why.
Mm-hmm.
Really get
and
it.
The world is your oyster.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want if you give yourself the permission to, but nobody else is going to give you that permission.
I love it.
Nobody's going to wake up one day and give you a phone call and say, hey, today's the day you start your business and start living your life to its fullest. Congrats. Like, go. You
Wow.
have to decide that.
Yeah. I love that. Starts with you. Get your mindset right. It's been such a pleasure. Vinci, if you have any last things, I was going to have her just plug all of her cool stuff that she's doing.
I just had two questions before you go. The first one was, how has networking and going to meetups and going to conferences changed your ideas on how, really like life and everything works? Because, I had a huge mind shift change after I started doing this podcast, talking to so many people, because, traditionally, we're both engineers. I mean, we only talk to engineers and they have engineer brain and they're just talking about, oh, how to use this equation, solve this. They're very small thinking, right? And then when you go meet all these people, your mind kind of opens up. So how did that affect your career?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, like you said, it opens up your world. And that's for me, again, my why, to have the freedom and like the world is my oyster. And networking, it's going to give you all the business opportunities. It's going to give you those ideas and the inspirations. And that's what the WIIRE retreats do for me as well, and the other conferences. It's new perspectives and ideas. And like next week, I'm going to go visit my friend in Alaska who came to a WIIRE retreat. And I've visited friends from all over the US that I've met at different conferences and retreats. So for me, there's such a huge return on investment for a conference that goes so much more beyond the monetary value.
Yeah. But it's also because you know that you're going to apply it as well. Like you're not just out there wasting your time. You're like going to be a sponge and take it in.
Yes.
Because you want that why, because you're all about that why, bringing it to fruition. What's the big 5 year? Are you one of those that has a 1 year, 5 year goal? What's like the big next play for Grace?
I'm really bad at goals, but I've realized I want to get into redevelopment within real estate, revitalization. And then after that, I would love to be a business consultant. I really like systems and processes. So I think maybe in my 30s, late 30s, I would love to have like my own small consulting business where I can pick what jobs I want to do and just do the ones that excite me and then go help somebody else level up their business.
Love that. That's been one of my big plays personally. Like I said, there's not a lot about real estate that I actually truly enjoy, if I'm being honest. I just love what it's doing for my life. But something that I do love is coaching and helping others. It's kind of how I got started. So I started my music school. And so now I've got a whole page where I coach people on real estate, on specifically usually like Airbnb stuff. That's the stuff I'm really good at, people, systems, organization, and the setup and decorations, how to have the boots on the ground and all that. So yeah, I'm right there with you on the consulting side. You had one last question?
Yeah, the last question I was going to ask you was, if people listening, I always like to do something actionable. They're like, hey, they switch on the news. They're like, things on fire. That's a storm, and markets crashing. China's invading. Russia's bombing. Then there's never a good time to get into investing. So they keep postponing it till they die. Like they're never going to do it, right? So for those, like people who are looking to get started or, looking to get the next property, what would you tell them to kind of like get in the game? Like how would you, or what would you tell them if you met them outside in a meetup?
I think one of the easiest ways is to create an Instagram page and start networking and sharing about your journey, because you'll draw so much inspiration and knowledge and partnerships from those people. And then, everybody says, I wish I would have started sooner. I have never met somebody say, I started too soon. I did it too soon. Like literally ever. And I still have people in my network who are starting 40s, 50s, 60s. It is never too late to change your life or to change your outlook.
That was it.
That was
for me.
not actionable. Let me take that back. That was not actionable. That was definitely philosophical. Actionable.
Well, I mean, you did say to
create your
create
buy
the
box.
Instagram, right? You did
Create your buy box.
Okay, buy box.
Put a very specific buy box together, like 3 to 5 bullet points, maybe location, price, metrics. Do you want rehab? How are you going to buy it? And then share it. Share it in Facebook groups, share it on Instagram, share it via email or over word of mouth, and deals will come to you. But you can't keep it a secret. The fact that you do real estate or are interested in real estate doesn't need to be a secret that people can find out. You got to share it with the world.
Interesting. We don't do enough of that Facebook group stuff.
Yeah.
I have to double down on that. Well,
that's all you.
So much. That's all me. Yeah, I'm the social media guy. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Grace. How can the listeners get in touch with you, follow you, get on the next deal, WIIRE, all that stuff?
Yeah, the best place to get a hold of me is on Instagram. I'm grace.investing. Feel free to ask me a question or get a hold of me. And if you want to follow WIIRE, it's WIIRE with 2 eyes.community.
WIIRE.community. Oh, that's on Instagram as well?
On Instagram, yes.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for your time. Learned a lot, and I'm sure the audience did as well. Vince, you have any final thoughts?
No, thanks for coming on the podcast. It was fun hanging out with you in was it Phoenix or Scottsdale? It was one of the two. It was
Tucson.
in the middle. Tucson. No, the Limitless event. That was not in Tucson. Yeah.
Yes, that was in Phoenix or Scottsdale. I don't know, but that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah.
Go to connected.
Yeah, go to conferences, go to meetups, guys. That's the message, meet people.
Get in the seats, get in the front.
Well, thank you for having me, guys. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks, Grace.
I don't know about you, but I definitely like to see 5-star reviews on any service or any product before I purchase. Please take a second to leave us a 5-star review, whether you're listening to it on Apple, iTunes, or Spotify, or whatever platform. Take a second, goes a long way, helps us a lot to grow the channel, and thanks for listening.